In order to understand the life story of Henry Wallace, it is important to first note his upbringing, as it played a major role in his political life. Wallace was born on a farm in Iowa on October 7, 1888. He completed a public school education and then went on to graduate from Iowa State College in 1910. Soon after graduation, he became a farmer. In 1913 to 1933, Wallace experimented with breeding high-yield strains of corn that led to many publications in agriculture. These early life accomplishments ultimately structured his later life. Shortly after years of farming, Wallace was appointed Secretary of Agriculture in 1933. And after serving a term, he was elected as the 33rd President of the United States to President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1941. Henry Wallace was the last true progressive leader to wield national power. A scientist, farmer, and capable administrator, Wallace revolutionized American farming as the Secretary of Agriculture. He spearheaded the New Deal's most revolutionary and innovative programs, fought concentrations of power, and transformed the federal government into a leading incubator of scientific research. Wallace spoke openly about the need to end racial segregation, the benefits of international cooperation, and the importance of economic development. As the story unfolds, many deem FDR's choice to remove Henry Wallace from the 1944 presidential ticket as one of the greatest what-ifs in history. The 1948 communists and other leftists in a once strong left-wing union of the Congress of Industrial Organizations were under the suppression of the Taft-Hartley Act, which allows the president to appoint a board to investigate union disputes when and if it is believed that it's a threat to national health or safety. Essentially, this act was a law that restricts the power of labor unions. This act in turn suppressed leftists and communists to have leadership in unions, which left the Progressive Party lacking support, resources, and courage, which directly challenges the dominant paradigm of how the U.S. political system has historically sabotaged leftist candidates. It is important to note at the time period at which Henry Wallace was campaigning as an important factor for his downfall. In the age of segregated America, Wallace's commitment to social injustice was a liability. FDR's personal racial views were moderate for the time, but incredibly racist in hindsight. Wallace advocated for the abolition of the poll tax and the end of segregation. I challenge you as audience members to reflect on a time in history in which a leader's thought-provoking policies were deemed crazy, yet later came to be a reality. The future, he said, belongs to those who go down the line unswervingly for the liberal principles of which political democracy and economic democracy, regardless of race, color, or religion. Essentially, Wallace's views were too provocative and ahead of the political climate of the era. Additionally, it is important to acknowledge Wallace's ideology on the global scale. For 3 reasons. Biased media outlets were utilized to frighten Americans and push progressives out of the political spotlight as the following. 1. The Chinese Communist victory against Chiang Kai-shek, despite massive U.S. military assistance and even the use of defeated Japanese troops. This was played up as a yellow menace across the country. Then there was the February regime change in Czechoslovakia, with communists taking full control. Most telling in its effect was the Berlin airlift, provoked by the Western Allies in a 2-day surprise move, including Deutschmark, a measure which threatened to immediately wreck the East German economy when there was no replacement for the now useless currency. All 3 were complicated matters for which Wallace and the progressives bore no responsibility, but took heavy losses nonetheless. A 3rd reason was a relentless media onslaught, first ignoring, then playing down, and finally red-baiting the campaign, almost exactly like the media treatment of Bernie Sanders. There is zero doubt that if Wallace had become president, America would have drastically veered towards the left. He campaigned on the government regulation to ensure equal pay for equal work across race and gender, the latter which isn't even supported by today's mainstream Republicans. Supporters argue he would have ended the Cold War before it started. Critics argue that Wallace's sympathetic view towards the Soviet Union would have weakened American interests and led to international conflict.